wonder if we could zoom out a little bit, because you've been in this market for a long time, and I've heard you talk, maybe when you're speaking to the youngsters or maybe the newer people, about how to kind of deal with market cycles. And you once said, quote, if you're feeling the despair, and some are feeling that right now, zoom out. The cycle never changes. Build, accumulate, survive. And when the tide turns, you'll be glad you did. You also said crypto isn't always hype and moonshots. Sometimes it's just endless waiting, watching your bags drift sideways while you scroll crypto Twitter for scraps of excitement. Patience is part of the grind. And the last one you said, I love this quote, by the way, Greg, if you stay bullish, you don't have to get bullish. That's the way I feel about this market. I'm just bullish.
Yeah.
You know, the price of Bitcoin doesn't change my opinion at all. But maybe you can talk a little bit about these quotes, because this sounds more like a really seasoned, trader to come out with things like that.
Yeah, and again, I've been speculating and trading a long time, and again, like that activity has afforded me a ton of opportunities. When I first got into crypto, I was in college, and I was still working, as a software engineer. But I remember when I really first started to understand what crypto was, I was so excited by it because, I went to school in Boulder, right? Boulder has a very thriving entrepreneurial community, right? There's a ton of great tech that comes out of there, and a ton of great companies that are ultimately born and ultimately incubated there. And at the time, I was working at a car dealership. I finally got my first software job. I had a little bit of disposable income. That job offered to pay for the rest of my school. So I was working and going to school, just busy as can be. But I wanted to invest in some of my friends' businesses, right? In small businesses of friends that I knew or people that I had met around the Boulder startup community. And, the reality is in the Western world, in most places in the Western world, you can't just go invest in somebody's business. Like, you have to be an accredited investor, which means like you have to be making a certain amount or have a certain amount of net worth. And it's a high watermark, right? And it's basically like the government telling you they don't trust you, but really it's to keep rich people rich and poor people poor. That's the reality.
It's scandalous.
Of it. It's I think it's one of the most shameful things in the entire world, because it's again, man, it's a system of control. It is absolutely a system of control designed to keep poor people poor at the end of the day. But because if you have $5,000 and you want to take a bet on a company, you can't. There's no way to do it. There's no legal way that you can actually do that unless you're being brought in on the friends and family round, and even then, like, the government pulls out the magnifying glass, and some of this is because, lawsuits have started to fly when companies go under, and there have been scams. But at the end of the day, that should be the responsibility of the investor. It's not the responsibility of the government to get in the middle of that. So at that time, like crypto.
Spoken like a true libertarian crypto bro.
Yes, absolutely, man. And the reality is crypto all of the sudden offered a way for the little guy to invest and make a bunch of money. And that's something that, that's what really first got me enamored with it. It was the fact that I had a couple of wins, but it was also the fact that, like, wait a minute, it's not just me that's having these wins. It's like, it's the little guy. It's for the little guy, right? And all of a sudden, like that totally is what made me immediately fall in love with it. It really is. Because I could look at a company's open source software. I could go look at their investors. I could look at their team. I could call them up, and I could be like, boom, I want to invest in this.
Like Ethereum, for example.
Yeah. Oh God, man. No, and so many other smaller tokens that kind of fell out of that first wave of blockchain programmability that Ethereum ultimately provided was. Like that was my first like real again, in your pre-interview questions you talked about aha moments. That was a big aha moment. I was like, wait a second, this is really crazy.
Peter Thiel took $500,000 and turned it into $1 billion using the exact same techniques we're using inside the investment club. He met a CEO, his name was Zuckerberg. He pitched him the deal and he said, okay, I'll give you $500,000. Mark went public and sold the shares to people like you. Well, what happened to Peter? Well, he exited and got a 2,300x return. The wealthy invest in early stage companies, folks. The public markets are for suckers. It's a rigged game. By the way, this happens in crypto as well. It's called pre-sale tokens. This is Solana. Does anybody know this chain? They sold pre-sale tokens for 4 cents. And you can see the date on there, April 5th, 2018. Look at Solana today, folks. That thing's up over 1,000x. The media and Wall Street and all these hype people get you to buy the top. Meanwhile, they put their clients in at the bottom and they use you for liquidity to make their clients rich. You can play this same game. You just have to have the financial education and the deal flow. That's it.
But market and market cycles right now, like the crypto market cycle is attached to the Bitcoin halving, right? Like every time the Bitcoin reward halves, 12 to 18 months after, you see the peak. It's like clockwork. It has never failed. It will never fail. Like the reality is Bitcoin is, it is the master asset because not only it was first, but because proof of work is such, I don't want to call it perfect from an algorithmic perspective, but it's so rooted in a physical process of energy production that it's, and for whatever reason, like, when you create, and it's just basic economics, right? When you start to reduce supply and keep the demand steady, the price is going to go up, right? It's going to go up. That the Bitcoin, the Bitcoin halving schedule, when Bitcoin halves and all of a sudden there is, almost effectively like a supply shock from the miner side, like that's going to drive the price up, right? So my investment strategies do revolve around that, and they always have. But again, like even if you, even when it comes to that halving cycle, zoom out, man, look at the freaking, look at the chart and realize that we're still early. Again, like energy, $130 trillion. Crypto, even notionally, when you include all the derivatives, it's probably got to be less than $10 trillion. So like we're still early. This is still a nascent asset class. And, at the end of the day, more and more traditional assets are going to start to be represented on chain. And again, like the floodgates have opened. So, I very much, like, I'm not really one to like day trade. I don't day trade. I don't speculate. I find plays that I believe in and I go all in. That's how I operate. It's really, how I believe the average investor should operate.
You still holding your Bitcoin?
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. To the moon. Again, I got my whole family in on it. Parents, mom, dad. My dad's, back in the early days, man, we had a bunch of miners running in my dad's basement. That's how I really first got into it. Me and my dad were building GPU rigs as fast as we could at one point. Like him and my brother.
That's amazing. So dad has Bitcoin too.
Oh yeah.
So not many dads.
He's got a bunch of crypto. Yeah, he's got a variety. Austin, my partner's dad, man, he's all in crypto too, man. Like he comes from a crypto family. Austin's brothers, who was a very, very early participant in Bitcoin, and we very much have tried to indoctrinate our families, make it a culture.
My dad has a master's from Caltech in electrical engineering. And on top of that, he's also just one of the smartest people I've ever met. But he's also over 80. And when it comes to crypto, it's very age related, I think, when it comes to people being able to get their head around it, which is why maybe the Warren Buffetts of the world never will.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I mean, I know Dan Tapiero really well, runs a multi-billion-dollar fund called 1RT. He's been in the space for a long time. And he said, Brian, I go around the world, and he's like, I can pretty much orange pill anybody I talk to with enough time. But he said, it's the sweet spot is right around the 50-something, where they're above that, it becomes exponentially harder. And when it's below that, it becomes exponentially easier. I got a 7-year-old son who's got more digital assets than CZ because he plays Roblox and everything. And if you explain it to him, he's like, yeah, duh. But if you explain it to my dad, even as smart as he is, he's like, no, I don't believe in it.
Yeah, and it's especially if your dad sounds like he probably had a successful career, but it's like, if it's been working, why would you change it? Warren Buffett's the same way, but Warren Buffett's investment strategies are timeless. But yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure his kids have probably tried to convince him, and a number of people have tried to convince him. And his partner, Charlie Munger, God rest his soul, but he freaking hated crypto.
Yeah,
man.
He was in his 90s, by the time it ended. But you think there is a generation issue with this, because it's something that's really hard for these older people to get their head around, because they didn't grow up with the internet, let alone digital assets.
Oh, absolutely, and that spans a variety of technologies, right? Trying to get my grandma to use Chat GPT is pissing in the wind.
yeah, it's definitely an issue.
Hey, I know investing in crypto is scary. It takes a real leap of faith, because there are so many scams, rug pulls, and bad actors out there. It's a dangerous business, which is why 95% of people lose all their money. Well, that's why I created the London Real Investment Club. so you can access the hottest deals on the planet and use the crypto bull market to create the generational wealth that you deserve. Join my team of over 100 people from around the world that are making millions of dollars behind the scenes investing in blockchain, AI, Web3 games, DeFi, Bitcoin, and more. Don't miss out. Click the link below to book a call with one of my team now. But hurry, this bull market will end soon.
I know investing in crypto can be scary. That's why you gotta join the investment club. Pull the trigger. Let's do this.